Welcome to Equip, Build, and Mature. Hope you have a great day. Today we're going to be taking an overview of one of the books of the Bible, and that will be the book of Lamentations. It's important for us to have the same worldview that Jeremiah did. He lived in a hard time, experienced difficult things, but he still remembered that no matter what was going on in the world, God was still on his throne. And that always gives us the perspective we need and the hope to hang on to when difficult things are happening in our world. So, who wrote the book of Lamentations? The author of Lamentations is not named in the book. Now, there is strong evidence inside the text and outside of the text that indicates the prophet Jeremiah was the author of this document. Now, Jewish and Christian tradition claim that Jeremiah wrote the book. The Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament, added a note that said, Jeremiah wrote the book of Lamentations. Now, when Jerome translated the Bible into Latin in the year 405 AD, he added a note that claimed that Jeremiah wrote Lamentations. The original name of the book is Ika. It is translated alas, or how. And that word carries the idea of weeping or lamenting about a very sad event. And later, translators and readers substituted the title Lamentations. They thought that it cleared up the meaning of the book. So the idea of lamenting connects the prophet Jeremiah to the book because of the events that it deals with. The writer of the book witnessed the results of the recent destruction of Jerusalem. He also saw the invasion. We read of that in Lamentations chapter 1, verses 13 to 15. So we see that Jeremiah was present for both events, the destruction of Jerusalem and the invasion. So what time in history did this take place? Well, the book begins in Lamentations 1:1, how she sits alone. The city, once crowded with people. The city was Jerusalem. And Jeremiah, the prophet, walked the streets and walked the paths of that city. All he saw was pain, suffering, and destruction, especially after the Babylonians invaded in 586 BC. Now, Jeremiah expressed such raw emotion in this document. And this is why the book is dated near the time of the invasion in late 586 BC or early 585 BC. So why is Lamentations so important for us to understand and for us to read? Well, like the book of Job, Lamentations described a man of God very confused by the results of evil and suffering in the world in which he lived. Job dealt with unexplained evil. Jeremiah lamented a tragedy totally caused by the choices of Jerusalem's citizens. The people of that once great city experienced the devastating judgment of a holy God. At the heart of the book, the core of Jeremiah's lament about the impact of sin in the world, that's chapter 3, verses 22 to 25. That is devoted, the core of the book and the heart is devoted to keeping your hope in God. This statement of faith stands so strong, encircled by the darkness. This statement of faith is a guiding light to all that suffer the consequences of their sin or someone else's sin and someone else's or their own disobedience. Sin and disobedience cause so much grief in our own personal lives and in the world that we live in. So what is the big idea of the book of Jeremiah? Well, as you read through the book, you begin to wonder how many different ways that Jeremiah could describe the desolation of that once proud city of Jerusalem. Chapter 2, verse 12, we see that children begged their mothers for food. We see young men and women were cut down by swords in chapter 2, verse 21. Then we see in chapter 4, verse 10, that mothers who were once full of compassion for their children actually used their children for their own food to survive. The roads of the city mourned Jerusalem's condition. We see that in chapter 1, verse 4. See, as Jeremiah wrote this document, he recognized the hopeless condition of the city of Jerusalem that was now piled with rubble. Jeremiah's reaction to the total destruction? Pain. It was simply pain. It clearly conveyed the significance of the horrific chaos in Jerusalem. Speaking in the first person, Jeremiah pictured himself captured in a besieged city. No one was left to hear his prayers. He was the target for the arrows of the enemy. We see that in chapter 3, verses 7 and 8, and verse 12. Even in what seemed to be a hopeless situation, Jeremiah somehow found hope in Yahweh. Chapter 3, verses 21 to 24. So how does this document of Lamentations apply to you and me in the 21st century? Well, first, Lamentations reminds us of the great importance of mourning over our own personal sin. It also reminds us that we need to ask God for His forgiveness when we fail Him, when we sin against Him. Much of Jeremiah's poetry is focused on the fallen bricks and the cracking mortar of that destroyed city. So, to make application, how does it apply to us? Do you ever take time to recognize any part of that destroyed city of Jerusalem in your own life? Do you grieve about the sin that still stops you from totally reflecting the character of God each and every day that He gives you breath of life? Do you ever feel overrun by the power of the enemy? Do you need to rediscover the hope that one can find in life only when they find God? I encourage you to read Lamentations 3, chapter 3, verses 17 to 26. And as you read that text, Lamentations 3, verses 17 to 26, you're going to find someone that is fully aware of sin's consequences. He was saddened by the results, but he had placed his hope and trust in his God. That's what we need to take away from Lamentations. Whatever it is that's going on in our world, whatever consequences we see of sin and disobedience in ours or other people's lives, we never need to lose our hope and trust that God is on His throne and God has a plan and God will work all things out for those who believe. You guys have a great day. Thanks for taking a few moments to be here with me today. Continue to follow God. Continue to hold on to God regardless of the situation around you. You guys take care.